Construing My Body, a PCP technique by Moran. We construe our bodies and what they do, even though we may not put it into words. This technique explores constructs about the body and the connection with core construing. Some of the constructs may be non-verbal or pre-verbal. Adding verbal labels to them may facilitate conversations about the body and understanding about why certain body parts or processes bother us more. Our body will change over time, so what bothers us at one age or for a period of time may not be a problem at all at another time. Part 1. Construing the body's parts. So the first thing we're going to do is draw an outline of a person. We're going to use this to ask the person to construe the different body parts, but we need something to start from. So, in the middle of the page, draw an outline of a person. It does not need to be lifelike or detailed. It is a sketch which will be added to. It just actually needs to have the basic parts on. Drawing the front outline means that all senses can be included, but you may want the opportunity to explore something related to the back of the body. For example, if the person had a back injury. If so, maybe a front and back view of a person would be more helpful. The next thing is to notice and mark the important body parts to the person that you're talking to. So if you're doing it for yourself, it's your own body parts that really matter to you in particular or are salient at the moment. So mark the parts of the body that you are more aware of or those that are more important to you now. In the example, they are marked in red. For example, knees. Draw arrows to the body parts and say what they are important for and when you become aware of them. For example, tennis, walking, gardening. These should only be short descriptions. You don't want to get into too much detail at this point. So you can see in this example, we've got the brain being important for thinking and mulling over, planning and remembering. We've got the mouth and stomach being important for eating and drinking. And then the hands being important for crafts, gardening, typing, arts, pottery and drawing, as are the knees. Now that's interesting, but we'll come back to that. Then we've got the legs and the knees and the hips and the feet being important for walking and tennis. We've also got the bladder being important to tennis. Now we're going to note what's bothering the person about each part of the body. So working down the body, make a note for each highlighted part and ask something like, so what bothers you about your legs? We go through each part of the body like that. Jot the answers at the side. So now we can understand a bit more about what's going on here and why they've highlighted these particular places. So the brain was highlighted because there's an issue about forgetting details, which is noticed in thinking and mulling things over, planning and remembering. Hearing in noisy places is an issue. So you can see the red marks on the ears. Seeing without glasses is an issue. Eating too much is an issue. Lack of strength in all muscles. Bladder weakness, swollen fingers, knee pain and toe pain. So we've got a bit more understanding already of what might be going on for this person. Part 2, getting more details through the elaboration of construing. Now we want to understand how these issues affect the person. So this is about exploring the impact. We want to understand something more about the impact of the bothersome body part or process. This is why it is a problem, although at this point we are not going to explore it in depth. Taking each item in turn, ask, why is it a problem for you, or how does it affect you? The answers will probably point towards some core constructs, but we don't yet know enough about them. So what we've asked for here is to find out why each part is bothersome. So the bladder weakness wakes me in the night. The knee pain wakes me in the night and affects activity. The lack of strength in all muscles means I can't lift things easily and can't hit the tennis ball really hard. Seeing without glasses, I don't want to rely on them. Forgetting details can seem I'm not interested or didn't listen. Hearing in noisy places. Difficult in some restaurants, can't hear what's been said. Eating too much, fatter than I want to be. Toe pain reminds me that an operation on my knee might not fix all the pain. And swollen fingers shows the arthritis. What if they stop working well or become painful? So we've now got a bit more understanding of what it is that's going on here, why some areas are so bothersome to the person. Now we want to find out more about each of the areas that are bothersome by asking for more detail. Get a new sheet of paper and write the body part on the left, add versus or a hyphen, and ask for the contrast pole. For example, wakes you in the night, as opposed to the contrast pole is shown in green text on the example. Ask for more details about why it is bothersome. Why is it an issue at the moment? Asking for 3 things for each often leads to greater clarity. Write them down in the person's own words. Don't paraphrase. So starting first of all with the bladder weakness that wakes me in the night, rather than, which is what the verses means, sleeps well. So the problem with that and the impact on the person is I don't want to get dementia. I don't like having to be aware that I might need a toilet. And I don't want to try and remedy it. It takes effort. So now let's look at the knee pain, which also wakes me in the night and affects activity, rather than feels better the more I do. I don't want to get dementia. I don't want to stop or reduce activity. I don't like taking so many painkillers. At this point, it could be tempting to go into a lot of detail about just these 2, but we've got many more areas to explore, and let's see what happens if we cover them all. Lack of strength in all muscles means I can't lift things easily and can't hit the tennis ball really hard, rather than strong for my age. I don't like being weaker than I was when younger. I want to be good at tennis. I want to be able to do things myself and not rely on help being available. Seeing without glasses. Don't want to rely on them, rather than can see really well. What if they aren't there? Am I going to run out of time to do things easily? Is my eyesight going to decline? Now you can see here there are only 2. Don't worry too much if people can only think of 2. If you can get 3, that's even better, But if all they can come up with is one or two, then go with the flow. Forgetting details can seem I'm not interested or didn't listen, rather than remember things that matter. I don't want to offend people. I want to have a good memory. It's frustrating. Hearing in noisy places, difficult in some restaurants, can't hear what is being said, rather than hearing is normal. It makes me aware that my hearing is worsening. It could look like I'm not listening. I don't want others to have to take it into account. Eating too much, fatter than I want to be, versus slim. I want to eat with others. I enjoy good food. I want to eat what I fancy. What about the toe pain then? Toe pain reminds me that an operation on my knee might not fix all the pain, rather than I don't have to think about my body. I don't like thinking about my body, it's boring. My body is doing things that are not all within my control, but somehow I think they should be. My body is letting my mind down. And swollen fingers. Shows the arthritis. What if they stop working well or become painful? Versus no arthritis. I want to be strong and healthy and to live a long life. I don't want my body to interfere with my plans. I'm getting better at crafts and I want to keep making progress. Now have a look at all these constructs and see what themes are arising from the exploration. So you might pick some out, or your client might pick some out, or you might leave them all to your client. So it's going to depend on who you're working with and what it's like for them doing that. So for some people, they can't necessarily choose for themselves, or they don't notice the things that we might notice. So this exploration will have led to the emergent pole of the construct, and we're going to have to ask for the contrast pole. So here's the list of constructs: independent versus reliant on others, free to choose and act versus restricted, strong versus weak, able to see what I'm doing clearly versus blind, can learn new skills easily versus learning needs support, independent versus burden to others, normal senses versus impaired vision and hearing, healthy weight versus overweight, within my control versus independent of me, fit and healthy versus ill, improving my skills versus declining skill levels. Now at this point you can see that independent comes up a couple of times, so that's clearly pretty important. And we might want to explore any of the constructs further. And what we're looking for is things that come up more than once, or things that seem very similar to each other, which you can check out. The construct we're going to check out in more detail here is my body does things that are outside my control versus I can influence my body's development. This is a kind of synthesized construct that's been drawn from lots of the others. So you could propose the emergent pole, my body does things that are outside my control, and invite them to give the contrast pole. Or they may want to say, let me have a look at this particular thing. So here we've got some negotiation about what might be the most useful to look at. From your point of view, what you're trying to do is pick up on something which seems to be a significant issue. Now you're going to make a list of constructs. So look at all the explanations so far, ideally placed on a table or something like that alongside each other. As for the constructs which seem to be overarching, these may be expressed as new constructs rather than as those taken directly. As for the contrast pole for each one, if they can't see themes, you could tentatively suggest one. For example, there seems to be something here about within my control. What would the contrast be? How would you describe something not within your control in relation to your body? Now you have choices to make about what to explore next. Some of that will be related to the reason for the exploration in the first place. For example, if it was "I am worried about my body falling apart" that led to the person coming to us, we might want to explore what lies behind that worry and explore a construct about decline in function. If the starting point was "I have a lot of pain and it is stopping me doing things," then exploring more around being free to choose might be useful. You might want to use another technique or a conversational exploration. In this case, the next exploration used ABC to explore a new construct that came out of making the list. My body is doing things that are outside my control, versus I can influence my body's development. In this particular example, I went on to explore using an ABC, but you could use another PCP technique to do that. I'm not going to go into any detail, I'll just show you what the ABC showed. The aim of Schudy's ABC is to see why not changing might make sense. Change can be challenging, even when it is desirable. Otherwise we would all be our perfect selves already. The process of exploring with the ABC often leads a person to become more aware of their construing. They might recognise that by not changing, they are acting in accordance with their construing of self. The ABC does not solve the problem of why change is difficult, but it does provide insights into why they are stuck. This is the layout for the ABC, and I'm going to show you what is explored by each step. So the first part is to identify the construct. So it's the undesired position, which is the non-preferred pole of the construct, which you put on the left. The desired position, i.e. the preferred pole of the construct, goes on the right. And what you're going to explore is the disadvantages and advantages of each position. This is the order that the exploration takes place in. So you're going from 1 to 2, followed by 3 to 4. So what you end up doing last is the desired position's disadvantages. That's quite important that that is last. Now sometimes people set it out in a different order. I think what matters most is that the disadvantage of the desired position comes last. First thing to explore is what's wrong with the undesired position. Why doesn't the person like it? The second thing is the reason for preferring the desired position. So why would you prefer that pole of the construct? Then you're moving on to the advantages of the undesired position. So what could be good about the undesired position? Might sound a bit crazy, but there is always something. That makes a lot of sense, because actually, if it was all bad, someone wouldn't stay there. So there must be some things that are okay about the undesired position. And then finally, what is often the most exciting part, what is the downside to the desired position? Now this is about why someone hasn't moved there. If it was all great, you'd think that they would have changed already. So we've set up the grid, and on the left side we've got my body does things that are outside my control, and on the right side I can influence my body's development. That's the preferred pole. Now we're going to explore the advantages and disadvantages of each position. Firstly then, what are the disadvantages of the position my body does things that are outside my control? Things will happen that I can't anticipate. How can I plan for the future? I feel controlled by my body. Now we're going to look at the advantages of the preferred position. So what are the advantages of being able to influence my body's development? Well, they say, I might be able to reduce problems. I could change my body myself. My future will be more within my control. Now let's see the advantages of the undesired position, which is my body does things that are outside my control. Well, the first advantage is I can do nothing, just watch and wait. Then I don't have to think about it, and I don't have to have responsibility for my fate. And now we're going to look at the disadvantages of the desired position. So what are the disadvantages of being able to influence your body's development? Well, I have to take more responsibility for how things turn out. I have to devote time and energy to it. I am not free to do as I please. Now we need to look at what we've got. Have we been able to work out what it is that's bothering the person? Why haven't they been able to move? The next step is to eyeball the completed grid. So look at the responses you have and see whether there are repeating themes. Pay particular attention to the final cell in the table, the downsides of the desired position. This often holds at least one of the keys to understanding the issue. In this example, there is something becoming clear about the importance of being free versus controlled, and the efforts it will take to make changes that I am not certain will be effective. The changes will take effort and make me feel I have to do things, conflicting with freedom of choice. There is also a recognition of responsibility for myself, something that might be desirable, except that being responsible implies making efforts to influence changes in my body. So you could explore any other constructs using whatever suits the purpose of your discussion. Remember your starting point. You might also stop there and review, thinking about the impact of this exploration and what sense it makes to both of you. Making sense of the material. You could invite the person to consider the whole process so far with questions like these. And if they can't think of any answers, you can explain to them how you might see it. Think about what you understand now about your construing. What have you learned? What connections are you making between constructs? Was anything surprising? Can you understand more about why those parts of your body or its processes are bothersome? What are the implications for you? Have any dilemmas been resolved as a result of the exploration? Is there something you want to do differently now you have thought about it more? So you could explore any other constructs using whatever suits the purpose of your discussion. Remember your starting point. You might also stop there and review, thinking about the impact of this exploration and what sense it makes to both of you. So we started from looking at a person's body and why parts might be bothersome. We would then move on to thinking about, in terms of the impact of those things, what it is that's so upsetting. If we go right back to the beginning and look again at the body and the parts that the person noted and the things they did with them, the implications are that they won't be able to do some of those things. So we'd try and think about how we could explore ways forward from now. So are there either modifications to activities if things decline, or are there other ways or other activities the person could do that might be just as enjoyable? So the possibilities are endless, and really that will depend on your client and what they want out of their sessions and your ability to see the possibilities and raise them as tentative areas for exploration and see which ones they're interested in. Okay, that's the end of this video. Thank you very much for listening.